You black little stray, who let you touch that? Victoria Vance Sterling, flagship general manager, said it flat like she was reading a stock count. Heritage Sterling flagship. 6 shoppers with a combined net worth of $40 million heard it. Not one of them said a word. Maya Sterling, 24, paint smudge boots and a faded denim jacket, didn't flinch. I'd like to try this dress. Try it. Victoria laughed once. She snatched the $15,000 gown clean from Maya's hands, the silk snapping like a whip. The sound cut across the marble floor and bounced off the glass display cases. Then Victoria picked the black titanium card off the counter and let it drop. It clattered against the white stone with a sound that rang through the entire floor. Stolen property. Security. Maya watched the card settle. Then she reached into her jacket pocket, slow, no urgency, and set a single item on the counter beside the empty display stand and...
Wrong move. She just ordered security to lock up the future owner. Let me take you back.
She wore a faded denim jacket, the cuffs stained with old paint. Her boots were scuffed. Her hands, calloused and careful, smelled faintly of linseed oil and turpentine. Underneath the boutique's heavy, suffocating perfume, that small, honest smell lingered. She didn't notice the perfume. She didn't notice the stares. She moved through the racks with quiet familiarity, the way someone moves through a house they grew up in. Victoria Vance noticed her immediately. From behind the glass counter, Victoria's eyes moved over Maya's clothes, slow and deliberate. The diamond watch on her wrist caught the light. It was worth $20,000. It matched nothing about the woman she was watching. "Can I help you find the exit?" Victoria's voice cut across the floor, sharp and amused. A few customers turned. Maya kept walking toward the evening gowns, calm, unbothered, like she hadn't heard. That more than anything seemed to offend Victoria. She stepped around the counter. Her heels clicked against the marble, fast and aggressive. Each step sounded like a countdown. She reached Maya in seconds, blocking her path with practiced authority. "This section isn't for browsing," Victoria said. "It's for buying." Maya looked at her, steady, unreadable calm. "I know," she said. Victoria's mouth tightened. She glanced toward the staff stationed near the registers, and one of them, a junior associate named Chloe, flinched at being noticed. "Chloe," Victoria called out. "Don't bother with this one." Chloe hesitated. She looked at Maya, then back at Victoria, uncertain. She said nothing. She lowered her eyes instead, the way people do when they want to disappear from a room without leaving it. Victoria turned back to Maya. Her gaze dropped to the denim jacket, then to the worn boots, then back up. Each glance felt like an accusation. "People like you," Victoria said slowly, "don't shop here. You window watch. You take photos for your friends. Then you leave." Maya didn't answer right away. Behind her, the spotless glass display cases reflected the chandelier light, the marble floor, Victoria's watch. They reflected everything except the quiet weight Maya was carrying. She checked her phone instead, just briefly, just long enough. The lock screen lit up. A text from Dad sat there, plain and unremarkable to anyone else. "See you at the flagship at 2 o'clock. Wear the ring." She slid the phone back into her pocket. No reaction. No explanation. Victoria mistook the silence for guilt. "I asked you a question," she said, stepping closer, now close enough that other shoppers paused to watch. 6 of them, scattered near the handbag displays, stopped pretending not to stare. Maya still didn't flinch. She glanced past Victoria toward the back of the store, toward the manager's office, toward the layout she clearly already knew. She knew where the fitting rooms were before any sign pointed there. She knew which hallway led to the stock room. None of it seemed to register with Victoria, who was too busy cataloging the jacket, the boots, the absence of anything shiny. "I'm looking for a gown," Maya finally said. "For a gala!" Victoria laughed, short and humorless. "Of course you are." She turned to the small crowd that had gathered, performing now, playing to an audience. "This happens more than you'd think," she announced. "People wander in off the street. They think a flagship boutique is a museum, free to look, free to touch, free to waste everyone's time." Chloe's hands twisted together near the register. She wanted to say something. Anyone watching closely could see it. But she said nothing because saying something had a cost she couldn't afford. Maya simply waited. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She didn't reach for the kind of proof that would end this in 5 seconds. Instead, she turned calm and composed and walked toward the evening gowns anyway. Victoria's jaw tightened. Her eyes followed every step, narrow and furious, the way someone watches an insult they haven't finished delivering. She wasn't done. Not even close. She didn't know who she was watching. She didn't know what the ring meant, the one currently tucked out of sight, the one with a silver S that matched the crest mounted above her own desk. She didn't know that the woman walking calmly toward $15,000 silk had grown up hearing stories about this exact building, this exact marble, this exact chandelier. All Victoria saw was a stray, and strays in her experience needed to be reminded where they belonged. The studio smelled like turpentine and old varnish, the morning light slanting through tall windows streaked with dust. Maya worked at her bench, hunched over a cracked oil painting, her brush moving in small, patient strokes. The canvas was older than she was, its colors dulled by decades of neglect. She'd been restoring it for 3 weeks. She didn't rush. She never rushed. A knock sounded at the door, soft, familiar, almost shy for a man of his stature. "It's open," she called, not looking up. Marcus Sterling stepped inside. He wore no tie, no jacket, nothing that announced the $4 billion behind his name. Just a simple sweater sleeves pushed up, the kind of outfit he only wore here in this small studio, away from boardrooms and cameras. He looked around at the cluttered shelves, the half-finished canvases, the jars of pigment lined up like soldiers. He smiled, small and proud. "Still doing it the hard way," he said. Maya finally glanced up. "The hard way is the only way that actually works." He crossed the room slowly, careful not to disturb anything, and stopped beside her bench. He studied the painting she was working on, the cracked varnish, the faded blues now slowly returning to life under her hands. "You could hire 10 restorers," he said. "Run a whole studio, put your name on the door." "I like the quiet," she said. "I like not being watched." Something in his expression softened at that. He understood it more than she knew. He sat down on the stool across from her, the old wood creaking under his weight, and reached into his coat pocket. He placed something on the workbench, gentle, deliberate. A heavy black onyx ring, its surface dark and smooth, a silver S crest catching the morning light. Maya set down her brush. She looked at the ring for a long moment before picking it up. It felt heavier than its size suggested, the kind of weight that came from history, not metal. "Your grandmother wore this," Marcus said quietly. "Then your mother. Now you." Maya turned it over in her fingers, slow, careful, like she was afraid of dropping something irreplaceable. "I don't wear jewelry to work," she said. "Paint gets in everything." "I know." He smiled again, tired but warm. "Wear it tonight. For the gala, just once." She nodded, slipping the ring into her jacket pocket instead of onto her hand the way she did with anything she wasn't ready to display yet. Marcus watched her a moment longer, then reached into his other pocket and produced a card. Matte black, heavier than any ordinary credit card, had a right to be. He pressed it into her palm, his fingers closing briefly over hers. "Buy whatever you need for tonight," he said. "Something nice. Something that makes you feel like yourself." "I don't need it," she said the way she always said it. "I know you don't need it." His voice was steady, certain. "That's exactly why I'm giving it to you." She held the card for a moment, the titanium cold against her warm hands, and slid it into her pocket beside the ring. 2 objects, 2 reminders of who she was, both hidden away where no one could see them. Marcus rose from the stool. He glanced at his watch, the gesture small but pointed. "I have to go," he said. "Audit at the flagship store this afternoon. Surprise inspection. I want to see how things actually run when nobody's expecting me." Be nice, Maya said, smiling faintly. I'm always nice. He paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame. Until I'm not. He left without another word, his driver already waiting outside the car, humming quietly at the curb. Maya watched the door close, then looked down at her hands, stained with pigment, rough with years of careful work. She thought about the ring in her pocket. She thought about the card beside it. She thought about the gala that night, the dress she still needed, the version of herself she'd have to become for a few hours. She didn't want any of it. Not really. The studio was enough. The quiet was enough. But love sometimes asked for compromises, and her father had asked so little of her over the years. She picked her brush back up. She returned to the painting, to the slow work of bringing something broken back to life, stroke by careful stroke. She didn't know yet what waited for her that afternoon. She didn't know that the calm of this morning, the smell of turpentine, the warmth of her father's visit was the last quiet she'd have before everything came apart in a room full of strangers. She just kept painting. She had a few hours left before she had to become someone else. Back on the boutique floor, Maya reached the gown she'd been looking for. It hung alone on a velvet hanger separated from the others by its price tag, $15,000. Hand-beaded silk, the kind of craftsmanship that took weeks to finish. She reached out, gentle, careful, the way she touched everything fragile. Victoria appeared before her fingers even made contact. Don't. The word came sharp, final, and Victoria's body slid into the aisle, blocking Maya completely. Up close, her perfume was overwhelming, thick and floral. Nothing like the honest smell that clung to Maya's hands. I just want to look at the stitching, Maya said. With those hands? Victoria's eyes dropped deliberate to the paint stains along Maya's knuckles. Absolutely not. Maya lowered her hand slowly. She didn't argue. She didn't explain that those hands had repaired paintings worth more than the entire gown rack combined. Victoria stepped closer, her heels clicking against the marble, each step measured and aggressive. There's a discount mall 2 blocks from here, she said. Better suited to your budget. Better suited to you. A few shoppers nearby glanced over, then quickly looked away the way people do when cruelty becomes uncomfortable to witness. Maya's jaw tightened just slightly, just enough to notice if anyone had been looking closely. Nobody was. Everyone was watching Victoria, instead drawn to her performance the way people are drawn to anything loud and confident. I'd still like to see the dress, Maya said. Victoria's smile turned cold. Without warning, she reached past Maya and yanked the gown off the rack, the silk pulling taut, the fabric making a soft tearing sound against the velvet hanger. Fine, Victoria said. Look, from there. She held it just out of reach, dangling it like bait, daring Maya to grab for it. Maya didn't. She simply watched, steady, unreadable, refusing to give Victoria the reaction she wanted. Chloe appeared from behind the register, drawn by the commotion. She approached carefully, her voice small. Victoria, maybe I could help her find something. Don't you dare. Victoria's head snapped toward her, voice low and venomous. One more word, Chloe, and you're done. I will fire you on the spot, in front of everyone. Chloe froze. Her eyes welled just slightly, and she stepped back, hands trembling at her sides. She looked at Maya, an unspoken apology in her expression. Maya gave her a small nod, barely visible, telling her it was fine, telling her to stay quiet, telling her this wasn't worth her job. Victoria turned back to Maya, satisfied, emboldened by the silence she'd forced onto the room. You see, she said loud enough for the nearby customers to hear, this is exactly the problem. People wander in, they cause a scene, they make my staff uncomfortable, and for what? A photo, a story to tell their friends. Maya said nothing. Her right hand rested calmly on the strap of her purse fingers, loose, unbothered. The overhead lights caught something small and dark on her finger, a flicker of silver against black onyx, gone again in an instant. Victoria didn't notice. She was too busy studying the denim jacket, the paint-smudged boots, the faded color of Maya's skin against the white marble floor. She saw exactly what she wanted to see and nothing more. "I think it's time you left," Victoria said. "I'd like to buy the dress." The words landed flat, simple, without anger. Victoria laughed, short and dismissive, the sound echoing slightly off the marble. "With what money?" Maya didn't answer. She reached into her jacket pocket instead, slow and deliberate, her fingers closing around something cold and heavy. Victoria's eyes followed the movement, sharp, suspicious, already certain of what she'd find. The wealthy shoppers nearby had stopped pretending to browse entirely now. They stood in small clusters, watching, whispering behind manicured hands. One woman pulled her handbag closer to her body, instinctive, reflexive, as if proximity alone might be contagious. Chloe stood frozen near the register, her knuckles white against the counter's edge. She wanted to step in. She wanted to say something, anything to stop what was coming. But Victoria's threat still hung in the air, and her job, her rent, her entire fragile stability depended on staying silent. Maya pulled her hand free of her pocket. The black titanium card caught the light cold and matte, utterly unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what it represented. She held it out toward Victoria, calm, steady, her expression unreadable. Victoria looked at it. Her eyes narrowed, slow and calculating, already constructing the story she wanted to tell. The gown still hung from her fist, suspended between them, $15,000 of silk caught in the silence. Neither woman was willing to break first. Somewhere behind them, the front doors stood unlocked, the morning sun still pouring across the marble. That was about to change.
Absolutely not. She snatched a dress right out of her hands just because she was wearing a denim jacket. If that were me, I would have dropped my last name right there and fired her on the spot. Imagine standing in a store your own family built, being treated like dirt by the hired help, and choosing to stay dead silent. The audacity is real.
Victoria took the card between two fingers, holding it the way someone holds something diseased. She turned it over once, twice, studying the matte black surface, the embossed letters, the weight that didn't match anything she expected from someone dressed like Maya. "This is stolen," she said. The words dropped flat into the room, certain, final, already a verdict instead of a question. Maya's expression didn't change. "It's not. Stolen cards don't just appear in the hands of women wearing thrift store denim." Victoria's voice rose now, performing again, building toward something. "I've seen this before. People find them, pickpocket them, think they can walk in here and spend someone else's fortune. It's mine," Maya said quietly. Victoria didn't listen. She turned the card over one final time, then without warning threw it down onto the marble floor. It landed with a sharp metallic clatter, skidding slightly before coming to rest near a small smudge of dirt tracked in from outside. The sound seemed to echo louder than it should have, cutting through the boutique's hushed elegance. "Security!" The word cracked through the air like a whip. Two guards near the entrance straightened immediately, moving fast, their boots heavy against the marble. "Lock the doors," Victoria commanded, adjusting her blazer, smoothing invisible wrinkles from the sleeve. "Detain this stray until the police arrive." The guards converged on Maya from either side, their presence sudden, suffocating, closing the space around her until there was nowhere left to step. One reached for her arm. She didn't resist, didn't flinch, didn't give them the satisfaction of a struggle. Behind them, the heavy metallic thud of the security locks engaged across the front glass doors. The sound sealed through the boutique, final and absolute, locking Maya inside with the very people determined to destroy her. The 6 wealthy shoppers nearby stopped entirely now, no longer pretending to browse. They stared openly, some clutching their purses tighter, others simply watching with the detached curiosity of people who knew this would never happen to them. Chloe stood frozen near the register, both hands pressed against her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She wanted to move. She wanted to scream that this was wrong, that someone needed to stop this immediately. She didn't. She couldn't. Her job, her silence, both felt like chains she hadn't agreed to wear. Maya stood between the two guards, calm on the surface, her thoughts elsewhere entirely. She looked down at the card lying discarded on the marble dirt smudged beside it, and something in her chest tightened. Not fear. Something closer to disbelief, the kind that comes from watching your own family's empire turn against you without recognition. "You can't keep doing this," Maya said quietly, not to Victoria, but to the room itself. Victoria ignored her completely, already pulling out her phone, already dialing, her voice clipped and triumphant as she spoke to the police dispatcher. "Yes, attempted theft, flagship boutique. We have her contained." Contained. The words settled over Maya like something physical, heavy and cold. Outside, beyond the locked glass doors, a sleek, black corporate SUV pulled silently to the curb. Nobody inside noticed. The guards were too focused on positioning themselves around Maya. Victoria was too focused on her phone call. Chloe was too focused on holding herself together. The SUV's door didn't open yet. It simply waited there, idling patient, like something inevitable approaching at its own pace. Inside, Maya's mind drifted briefly to her father's words from that morning. Wear the ring. She hadn't worn it. It sat tucked in her jacket pocket, hidden silent exactly where it had been all morning. She could end this in seconds. One word, one raised hand, one flash of silver against black onyx, and every guard in this room would step back immediately. She didn't move. Some part of her, the part that had spent years trying to be ordinary, trying to be unseen, wanted to see exactly how far this would go before anyone found the decency to stop it themselves. Victoria ended her call and turned back toward Maya, satisfaction written across her face. "Police are on their way," she announced loudly for the benefit of the watching crowd. 5 minutes. "You're making a mistake," Maya said. "The only mistake," Victoria said, stepping closer, "was you thinking you could walk in here and steal from people who actually belong." The guards tightened their grip slightly. Maya didn't resist. She simply stood there, surrounded, isolated, the marble floor cold beneath her boots, the discarded card still lying where it had landed. Through the locked glass doors, the black SUV's engine shut off. Nobody noticed yet. But something was about to walk through those doors that would change everything in this room, and Victoria, still glowing with the certainty of her own righteousness, had absolutely no idea it was already here. If you want to see exactly how this arrogant manager digs her own grave, you know what to do. Now back to Maya, surrounded by guards. The minutes stretched longer than minutes should. Maya stood between the guards, her wrists not restrained, but might as well have been the weight of every stare pressing down harder than any actual hand could. She kept her eyes forward, fixed on nothing, refusing to give the watching crowd the satisfaction of seeing her break. "Identification," one of the guards said. "Now." She reached slowly into her jacket, careful, deliberate, aware that any sudden movement might be misread as something dangerous. She produced her driver's license, plain, unremarkable, nothing on it that hinted at $4 billion. The guard studied it, frowning, comparing the photo to the woman standing in front of him. He didn't recognize the name. Why would he? Sterling was common enough, ordinary enough, easy to dismiss as coincidence. Somewhere beneath her calm, something in Maya finally cracked, just slightly, just enough to ache. She thought about every year she'd spent trying to be normal, trying to be invisible, trying to prove to herself that she could exist outside her father's shadow. She thought about the calluses on her hands earned through real work nobody in this room would ever believe she was capable of. She thought about how none of it mattered. Not the years, not the work, not the quiet life she'd built brick by careful brick. All of it dissolved the moment Victoria looked at her skin, her jacket, her boots, and decided everything else before a single word was spoken. She wasn't being judged for who she was. She was being judged for what she appeared to be. The distance between those two things had never felt wider than it did right now, standing on marble her own family had laid decades ago. Chloe still hadn't moved from behind the register. Tears slid silently down her face, now unchecked, unwiped. She watched Maya's expression, the small flicker of pain crossing it before vanishing again beneath practiced calm and something in her chest broke a little further with each passing second. Then the locks disengaged. A sharp mechanical click cut through the tension, followed by the heavy glass doors swinging open from the outside. Cold, morning air rushed into the boutique, scattering the perfume, scattering the silence. Marcus Sterling stepped inside. He wore a charcoal suit, now sharp and unforgiving, nothing like the soft sweater from that morning. His expression carried none of the warmth he'd shown in Maya's studio. His eyes moved across the room, once fast assessing, missing nothing. Victoria spotted him first. Her entire posture transformed instantly, shoulders pulling back, chin, lifting a wide and desperate smile spreading across her face. "Mr. Sterling." Her voice climbed an octave, sycophantic, breathless. "What perfect timing. We just caught a thief trying to use a stolen card." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't even look at her. His gaze moved past Victoria, entirely sweeping over the guards, the watching crowd, Chloe's tear-streaked face near the register. It stopped finally on the black titanium card still lying on the marble floor, dirt smudged beside it exactly where it had been thrown. Something shifted in his expression, subtle, contained, but unmistakable to anyone paying attention. The temperature in the room seemed to drop all at once. 30 people, shoppers and staff alike, suddenly understood with sickening clarity that the CEO of the entire Sterling Empire had just walked into the middle of something none of them could undo. Victoria, still riding the high of her own importance, kept talking. She had the audacity to claim ownership of a Sterling card. "Can you imagine I had security lock the doors immediately? Standard protocol, of course." Marcus said nothing. His eyes lifted slowly from the card on the floor, traveling across the marble, until they finally landed on Maya, standing motionless between two guards, who suddenly looked far less certain of themselves than they had moments ago. Maya met his gaze. Steady, aching. Relieved in a way she hadn't let herself feel until this exact second. Victoria sensing something was wrong, but too far gone in her own narrative to recognize what pressed forward anyway. "I can have the police handle the rest, sir. You don't need to trouble yourself with someone like her." The room went utterly silent. Marcus took one slow step forward, his polished shoes silent against the marble. Then another. He walked past Victoria, entirely close enough that she could have reached out and touched his sleeve, and she did nothing but stand there, smile faltering for the first time. He stopped directly in front of Maya. The guards beside her instinctively loosened their grip, uncertain now, sensing something enormous shifting beneath the surface of this moment. Marcus reached out gentle and brushed a strand of hair away from his daughter's face the way he had when she was small. His jaw tightened, the only sign of the fury building quietly beneath his composure. He turned his head slow and deliberate toward Victoria. Whatever certainty she'd been holding on to for the last hour finally began to crack, visible now, in the way her smile faded, in the way her hands twisted together in front of her, in the way her eyes darted toward the exit she no longer had access to. The store held its breath, waiting. Marcus's voice, when it finally came, was quiet, terrifyingly quiet. "Did this woman," he said, not raising his volume at all, "just put her hands on my daughter?" The question landed like a gunshot in the silent room. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed again, no words emerging. Her eyes darted to Maya, then back to Marcus, searching for some version of this scenario that didn't end with her career in ruins. "Your," she started, voice cracking. "I'm sorry, did you say?" "Daughter," Marcus repeated, slow and deliberate, each syllable a small detonation. "Maya Sterling, my only child. The sole heir to everything you're currently standing inside of." Victoria's face drained of color, the blood retreating so visibly that she looked for a moment the shade of old cement. Her breath hitched short and ragged, audible even from several feet away. The two guards beside Maya released her arms entirely now, stepping back, putting distance between themselves and the situation as quickly as decorum allowed. Maya raised her right hand slowly, calm, deliberate, no rush in the gesture at all. The overhead lights caught the surface of the onyx ring dark and smooth, the silver S crest catching fire under the chandelier. She turned her hand slightly, letting everyone see it, clearly letting the silence stretch just long enough for the recognition to land. It matched. Exactly. The same silver S, the same precise design mounted on the wall directly above Victoria's own manager's desk, the crest she walked past every single day without ever truly seeing it. A few of the watching shoppers gasped audibly. One woman covered her mouth. Chloe, still standing frozen near the register, pressed a trembling hand against her chest, relief and horror tangled together across her face. Victoria stared at the ring like it had personally betrayed her. She whispered. That's not possible. It's very possible, Marcus said. It's been possible for 24 years. He turned fully toward her now, his presence filling the space between them, calm in a way that felt far more dangerous than shouting ever could. I came here today for a routine audit, he continued. Instead, I find my daughter surrounded by security, her card thrown on the floor, locked inside her own family's store like a criminal. Victoria's hands twisted together in front of her knuckles, white, desperate. Mr. Sterling, I had no way of knowing. You had every way of knowing, Marcus said, cutting her off without raising his voice. You simply didn't bother to look. The silence that followed felt enormous, pressing down on every person still standing in the boutique. Nobody moved. Nobody dared to. Victoria opened her mouth again, searching for something, anything that might salvage the wreckage spreading around her. I was protecting the store, she finally managed. Protecting the brand. I didn't know she was... You didn't ask, Maya said quietly, speaking for the first time since her father arrived. Her voice carried none of the anger Victoria might have expected. It carried something heavier instead. Disappointment plain and unhidden. You looked at my jacket, Maya continued. You looked at my hands. You decided everything about me before I said a single word. And when Chloe tried to help, you threatened her job for showing basic decency. Victoria's eyes flicked toward Chloe, who straightened slightly under the sudden attention, no longer hiding behind the register. I was just doing my job, Victoria said, the words thin and unconvincing, even to her own ears. Your job, Marcus said, was to run this store with integrity. Instead, you ran it with cruelty, and you did it loudly enough that 30 people watched you throw my daughter's card on the floor like garbage. He glanced down at the card still lying there, dirt smudged beside it, untouched, since the moment Victoria discarded it. He bent down slow and deliberate and picked it up himself, brushing it clean against his sleeve before holding it out toward Maya. She took it from him, their fingers brushing briefly, a small private moment of comfort inside a room still reeling from shock. Victoria watched the exchange, her career visibly dying somewhere behind her eyes. She tried to speak again, some final attempt at salvaging dignity, but nothing came out. Her mouth opened and closed once, twice, producing only silence. The marble floor beneath her suddenly felt less like solid ground and more like the edge of something she was about to fall through entirely. Marcus straightened his eyes, never leaving Victoria's face. I built this company on one principle, he said. Everyone who walks through these doors deserves dignity. Not because of what they're wearing, not because of what they can afford, because they're human beings. Victoria's lips trembled. Mr. Sterling, please, I've worked here for 12 years. I've generated millions in revenue. Surely that counts for something. It did, Marcus said. Until this morning. He turned slightly toward the guard still standing nearby, uncertain, awaiting direction. Take her pin, he said simply. She's no longer general manager of this store. One guard stepped forward, hesitant, glancing at Victoria for some sign of resistance. She didn't fight him. She couldn't. Her hands were shaking too badly to do anything but stand there while he unpinned the small gold badge from her blazer, the one that read General Manager in elegant script. The pin clattered onto the counter beside the discarded gown, small and insignificant, now stripped of every ounce of authority it once carried. Victoria's gold nameplate followed seconds later, surrendered from her shaking hands, sliding across the polished surface until it came to rest beside the pin. two small objects, the entire architecture of her identity reduced to scrap metal on a countertop. "You can't do this," she whispered, though even she seemed to understand how hollow the protest sounded. "I can," Marcus said, "and I am." He nodded toward the service exit at the back of the store. Two guards moved to either side of Victoria, their grip firm, but not unkind, simply procedural. Now the same procedure she'd ordered used against Maya less than 10 minutes earlier. She didn't resist as they led her away. She couldn't. The same elite shoppers who'd looked away earlier, who'd clutched their purses and whispered behind manicured hands, now watched openly as the woman who once ruled this floor with cold authority was walked out through the back like discarded inventory. Nobody whispered this time. The silence felt different now. Heavier. Final. The doors at the service exit swung shut behind her, and just like that, Victoria Vance was gone from the only world she'd ever known how to navigate. Maya exhaled slow and quiet, something in her shoulders finally loosening after hours of carrying weight she hadn't asked for. She turned toward Chloe, who still stood near the register, eyes, red hands trembling slightly from everything she'd just witnessed. Maya crossed the marble floor toward her, unhurried, the click of her boots replacing the absence of Victoria's heels. "You tried to help me," Maya said, "even when it could have cost you everything." Chloe shook her head quickly. "I didn't do enough. I should have said something sooner. I should have—" "You did exactly enough," Maya said gently. "More than anyone else in this building." She glanced toward her father, who gave a small, approving nod from where he stood. "This store needs a manager who actually sees people," Maya said. "Not just their clothes, not just their bank accounts." "I'd like that to be you." Chloe's eyes widened, disbelief flickering across her face. "Me, I'm 22. I've worked here 8 months. Long enough to know the difference between right and wrong," Maya said. "That matters more than years." Marcus stepped forward, confirming it with a simple nod. "Effective immediately. We'll handle the paperwork this afternoon." Chloe pressed a hand against her mouth, tears returning, different ones. This time the kind that came from relief rather than fear. She nodded, unable to manage words just yet. The gown still hung nearby, abandoned on the counter where Victoria had left it. Maya walked over, lifted it carefully, and laid it across the counter in front of Chloe. She reached into her pocket and produced the black titanium card, the same one that had been thrown to the floor, declared stolen, dismissed as fraud by a woman who never once considered asking a single question. She held it out toward Chloe. "Ring up the dress," Maya said, and didn't look back.
Fiction. But that feeling? We all know the burning frustration of being judged by what you're wearing instead of who you are. It hurts watching someone's arrogant pride step all over someone else's dignity just because they think they hold the keys to the room. Have you ever been profiled or told you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be? Drop a comment below. Like, share, subscribe. Simple.